Hi, I'm Rebecca Rivas. I am the program director for the LatinX Theatre Project and an artistic associate here at TheatreSquared. For our first Performance Friday episode in our Play On series, I wanted to give you some insights into the audition experience. I've had a lot of experience on both sides of the process as an actor, as a director, and now as the person who coordinates many of the auditions for TheatreSquared. I've experienced auditions from a lot of different angles, and I'm excited to share some of what I think are best practices for that process, and some things that maybe that I like to keep in mind when I'm auditioning for a role. But first, I'm going to answer some questions. So number one, when did you know you wanted to be a performer? What was your first production? I got my start late. A lot of people start acting when they are very, very young. That was not the case for me. I did make my cousins do a lot of plays. After our Sunday barbecues, we would rehearse for our Christmas nativity scene. That was just always something that, I did for fun. Didn't really think I would go into it for a career. Then in high school, my parents told me I needed to do some extracurricular activities because my sister did band, my brother did baseball, and I didn't really do anything. So I auditioned for what would be my first performance in our high school's production of Grease. And I played Cha-Cha di Gregorio. Yeah, okay. Question number two. You've been in multiple TheatreSquared productions over the years. Do you have a favorite backstage moment or TheatreSquared memory? I would say probably one of my favorite. It was a very stressful thing, but I always feel like it was also kind of like a roller coaster ride, which was the play The Ding Dong, which is this French farce. Very, very funny, but I had crazy costume changes. So I would say some of my favorite moments were after we nailed a quick change, and I had time to breathe right before I got on stage. But that show was a lot of fun, and there were a lot of really great backstage memories. And then kind of on the flip side, in Reasons to Be Pretty, which is a dark comedy, it was a very quiet backstage, and everybody was really kind of working and in the zone, and I loved that. And I love that about TheatreSquared. That kind of really, depending on the show, the energy is different, but everybody is there to work and do really good work. Number three, what does your role as artistic associate at TheatreSquared entail? Has your background as a performance influenced your work? Definitely. Because a lot of what I do on the artistic side has to do with casting. That certainly, as a performer, you have an appreciation for that process that most people that maybe who haven't had to be on the other side of that process maybe don't have an appreciation for. So I'm very, very cognizant of actors and how terrifying that process can be. I think that's been very helpful. And then of course TheatreSquared, they really are, their aesthetic is very much what the kinds of shows that they tend to do are very much character-based and relationship-based. And so because of my training as an actor, I think when we're looking to shape the season, when we're reading plays, when we're deciding, when we're talking about, what something wants to be artistically in this space, I think I have, being an actor allows me to speak to that in an informed way. Number four, is there any advice that you wish you could go back in time and tell yourself as a young actor? Yes. And I'll talk a little bit more about this when I get into the audition tips, but definitely the idea that when you go into an audition room, everybody in that space is rooting for you. Everybody wants you to do well. It is a very positive place. And I think as an actor, a lot of times you think it's a scary place, that everybody's there to judge you. And that is not the case at all. It's like the exact opposite, especially here at TheatreSquared. So it's, and I think for a large part in the theater world, you're not gonna, there's always some negative people, but those are really, really the exception and not the rule. So having a better understanding of that would have been nice. It would have probably made auditions a lot easier. Number 5, what is the LatinX Theatre Project? So the LatinX Theatre Project is the other part of my job. I am the program director there. It is a group of ensemble. We have an ensemble of about 15 people from all over Northwest Arkansas who come together to create original work. We write poetry, we write hip hop, we write songs, and then we devise theater from the ground up. We create it using props, using movement, to tell stories that have a primary focus on underrepresented communities here in Northwest Arkansas. Obviously, Latinx issues are a focus. But yeah, we create new work. Our work is ours. And we just finished doing a show up in Little Rock called Crossroads that tells the story of a girl who, and her parents and her mom's story as well. It's generational. And they, and that decision you have to make between following your dream and maybe doing something in the arts and not doing that and doing something practical and doing something safe. And that very much is something that a lot of the ensemble members, myself included, had to face growing up, and making that decision. Like, do I want security, or do I want something that, is going to be a really, really hard road to follow, but it'll be worth it for my soul. So those are the kinds of stories we tell, and they're all our own words, they're all our own songs, everything. So if you ever want to check us out, you can check us out at lxtp.org. You can find us on Instagram at LatinX Theatre Project, or Facebook too, if you're on Facebook. So let's get to some audition tips. I just kind of was thinking that we would talk a little bit about some of the questions that I get asked a lot. I used to be a professor at a university, and so these are some of the questions that my students would come to me when they were getting ready for a big audition. So one of the first things is always picking a piece. What song should I sing? What monologue should I choose? What is there? How do I do this cold reading? But I think as far as picking something, you're usually going to get some guidelines from in the casting brief, in the casting notice. They're going to say, we're doing The Music Man. So then you're going to want to choose something that, if it's a song, you're going to want to choose something that is in that style. You don't necessarily want to do something from that musical unless they ask you, then you do that. And usually it's pretty specific. But if you're kind of choosing something just for maybe a larger cattle call audition, something where you're going to audition for a whole bunch of different universities or a whole bunch of different programs or theaters, you want to go with something that highlights your talent best. What you want to sing something that both you can wow those auditors with whether that's your highest note or your biggest belt, but it also really, and this is, I think, where it sets you apart, is when you can do that in connection to something that you really want. And so choosing a song that is active, choosing a song that someone is singing because they want something. And when you, as a person, connect with that, when you sing a song, and not that you just like it, but you know what that character is going through, that means there's a whole other level that there's a whole lot of heart that you can bring to that song, on top of being able to sing your highest note or belt that big last chord note. That's really what you want to look at. And the same is true for a monologue. When you read, first you always just want to be reading. You always want to be like learning and more about the craft, which has to do with, and a lot of that has to do with reading plays. So finding pieces that, again, you really, really resonate with you, that means something to you, that you can identify with, or that you just really, really love to do. Because when you're choosing audition pieces, you're gonna have to do them a lot. So it's good to choose something that you really want, as opposed to trying to choose something right. Which I think a lot of young actors do, which is, well, I'm auditioning for this, so it needs to be, this style, and it's for this character, so I want it to find a character that's just like that. But if you don't really like it, if it doesn't really speak to you, and you're trying to kind of read the minds of the director and the casting director, and you can't read their mind. I think usually choosing something that you really, really love, and that happens to fall within those kinds of criteria, I think is really important. And it also helps if it's not kind of one of the classic characters like Blanche Dubois or Hamlet or something like that. You just want to be careful with those kinds of things too. The next thing that people usually ask about is what to wear. And I always think the best thing to wear is something that you feel your best in. I had a colleague who used to tell students that you should go dressed like for a second or third date. Not what you would wear for the first date, but what you would wear for the second or the third date. So it's a little bit more like you don't have to worry about being something for that other person. You're just, who you are. So yeah, I always think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. So some other things I think kind of go back to what I talked about earlier, which is knowing that everybody is rooting for you in the room. We want you to do your best. No one in there is rooting against you. And that also I think goes, like, if you've got the part, if you've already gotten that role and you're doing a show, that's true for the audience too. I think, just as a side note, everybody in that audience is ready for a good show. Nobody out there is, oh, I hope they forget their line. That's just not going to happen. And if they are, then, who cares about that one person? Like, there's 99.9% of people want to see you do your best. And then walking in the room is probably the hardest part of the audition process, I think. So you're terrified, you've got all of this stuff to do, you're very focused, and a lot of that energy can kind of make it seem like you don't want to be there. Or sometimes that you're scared and that, maybe you're apologizing for being there, but this is your time. So when you walk through those doors, you want to come in with not overconfidence, right? Not like, you're so lucky I'm here, but just kind of knowing that you've got, you've done your work. You are excited to share your work. And you're also excited to be part of this process, because an audition is the first step in a very long process, a months-long process. So the people that we're seeing come in the room, are people that we know. Not only do we like your work, but also like we're going to be hanging out with you for many hours of the day for months on end, and if the show extends even longer. So we want to see that you want to be there, not pushing for that, but just kind of a person who is happy to be doing this work and sharing it with somebody else. If you get an adjustment, if you mess up, first of all, if you mess up, we don't know. Just keep on going. Don't tell us, and then if you get an adjustment, yay, that's fantastic. If a director says, hey, can you now think about it this way? Try not to take that in the negative. Like, oh, I totally messed up. What's the point now? Don't give up. Actually, that means the director is saying, hey, I liked what I saw, but I'd like to see if you can do this, and be willing to play. Because again, nobody is expecting at day one of rehearsal for your performance to be ready. A director is there to help coach you towards something else, something a little bit different. So know that there's always room. There is no perfection in this. Theater is not perfect. It is live. It is something always goes wrong, which is one of the great things about it. And I think there should be a lot of comfort in that, is that in professional theater, you never expect everything to go perfectly. You always expect something to go wrong, and we know we've got it because we know what we're doing. And so do you. When you walk in that audition room, just know, I've got this, and I'm happy to be here with you. And that will hopefully then get you a job, and we will see you again, and again. And then once you're in that room, just remain a positive person, a positive force. Theater is a small world. So once we find people who want to be there and like to be there, and you want to invite them back. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But I hope to see you at TheatreSquared. If you see me around, say, hey, hi, and feel free to ask me a question. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay healthy.